All right, Seattle is one of the many progressive cities grappling with a major homeless crisis. Earlier this year, the city infuriated businesses by briefly passing, they repealed it, a tax on employers to fight rabid homelessness in that city. Now it's trying a different tactic. Get this, using taxpayers' funds to send the homeless to their families who might be out of town, just to get them out of there. Leslie Marshall is a radio host. Leslie, is this the right way to handle homelessness? In the case of Seattle, they have the 5th largest homeless population. Can this work?
I live in Los Angeles that has the first and the highest homeless population. So if it does, it's definitely something we need to look at here in Los Angeles. Brian, homelessness is multifaceted. There are many reasons why people are homeless, and I don't think that this is going to be a cure-all, but I think it's a decent idea. Let me tell you about something that happened 10 years ago in Spain. Not homeless, but immigrants who came to Spain that were unemployed. The country of Spain could not afford to keep them, so they offered them tickets to leave Spain, and although over 20,000 rather than 80,000 that they wanted took the money, that's what's happening in Seattle. These are people that are not partaking of shelters or the homeless services. Right. Some of these people, they're afraid, could in the future commit a crime, and some of these people are there, Brian, because they were robbed, they lost a job, they want to get back to their family in Florida or the Midwest, and this offers an opportunity for reunification with their families, and it helps Seattle on that front.
And what's really alarming some, and who can blame them, and you must have seen this in Los Angeles, is the violence. A lot of these men are getting violent. In fact, one Arizona family who was touring Seattle were attacked with a rope. They grabbed the dad and they put a rope around his neck and started choking him. Then they just cleaned out the area around the Seattle Needle. I was fascinated by this. Seattle, with the 3rd highest homeless population, 11,643. That's 121 homeless per 10,000 people. This is what they estimate. A third of the homeless, serious substance abusers. That goes back to fentanyl and everything else that we're dealing with. A third mentally ill, and a third can't handle the soaring housing costs that are cropping up in the cities that you're in, and in places like Seattle and in San Francisco.
Well, Brian, that is a huge issue here in Los Angeles, because some people want to say, oh, it's the liberals and Democratic policies. No, this has been coming for the better part of a decade. We see it especially in cities like San Francisco, where you have people from Silicon Valley buying up real estate like crazy and pushing out people who in the past could afford these places. This is happening in the Pacific Northwest, like Seattle and here where I am in Los Angeles. And that speaks to the multifaceted problem, because you have mental illness, you have drug abuse, and then you have lack of affordability. But let's also talk about affordability, Brian, because you have $13 million that ends up in Seattle coming up to 500 beds for over 11,000 people. It just doesn't cut it. So this may sound crazy, but it actually could be more cost effective, and it could solve the problem that some of the financing legislation and certainly not enough beds for all these people are going to help with.
Yeah, in Seattle, they also they're messing with this. They have a city-sanctioned encampment called Licton Springs Village, where residents are allowed to use heroin and needles until they pass out. How's that going to work? I also talked to people in Los Angeles who say there's a lot of people, young people, they could get jobs, mentally fit, but are choosing not to participate in society. Have you seen that?
I have to say, and I'm going to sound so judgmental here, Brian, okay? But when my kids are in the car and somebody looks really destitute, we pick and choose who we give money to, especially if it's a family with children. That tugs at my heartstrings as a mom and my kids. But there are times that I see somebody with a nice smartphone and nice sneakers and a souped-up skateboard, and they look healthy. And forgive my judgment, but I think you look healthy enough that you could get a job. So do I think there are some people that are gaming the system and taking advantage? Absolutely, and not just here in Los Angeles.
And if I could paraphrase Michael Jordan, because I know he's watching, he said, if you can come up to me and ask me for $1, you could also say, hello, welcome to McDonald's. There's no job beneath you. Get a job, get in the system, do your best. Mentally ill is a different situation. Hooked on drugs, a different situation. But if you can work, you have an obligation to work. Leslie, thanks so much.
Thank you, Brian.
All right, meanwhile, let's